Hey, what is going on, crypto people? Happy freaking Wednesday, Generational Wealth Wednesday. Speaking of generational wealth, what's going on at Ripple right now? One of the largest crypto acquisitions in the history of the crypto space, 1.25 billion with the B, billion acquisition of this, I don't know, headspace, head place, head something. I will check it out. Is it Tuesday? Oh, is it Tuesday? Is it really Tuesday? Wow. That's when you know life is good. Life is so good that you don't even know what day of the week it is. That is awesome. What's going on? What's going on? My Fui, is it Fui? What's going on, bro? Listen, this is big time stuff. Big time stuff for sure. Appreciate you guys checking in. There's a spaces going on right now. Vet is what is he? He has Hugo Filion from Florida Networks on. We're gonna check that out as well. But I do want to cover this acquisition and what does it mean? What does it really mean for the XRP holders? Because there's some who believe it doesn't mean nada, nothing. I think there's a different take to it all. I really do. We got to pay attention to that. What's going on, Auntie Val? How are you? XRP staking is the subject of the spaces with Hugo Filion and Vet. So we're going to tune into that. Let me see if I can find it, and then I see if I can find it, and then we'll cover this acquisition because I think it by Ripple. I think it's bigger. I don't think I know. It's bigger than what people are thinking. Let's see. Okay, listen live. Let's go. So I do have it. So let's do this. My question is going to be the value for XRP holders. Who's going to get to it first? For networks with the FXRP protocol, programmability coming from the XRPL from Ripple XDev, who's going to provide the value to the XRP holders first?
The same sentiment as from your side, high level, that there's a shift in that thinking. I just want to have from you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's a lot of retail, institutional interest, and I think there's a bigger mismatch, in where that institutional research, interest wants to go and what can actually be done on chain. And I think that's quite interesting. So, if you view blockchains as just rails for money, that's fine. It can be new rails. But fundamentally, I find that broadly an uninteresting concept. I think it's much more interesting what you can do to bring institutions together in a way where they don't have to trust each other. One of the biggest issues of running a financial or working in a financial institution is you're very limited in the number of people you can transact with. And this is largely because you've got to onboard, the people you transact with. You've got to KYC them, you've got to AML them, you've got to work with their systems. It's all very complicated. And I think, one of the reasons I find blockchains interesting is I like the ability to open up the market in a way that conventional businesses can't ever do. And I think that's where we'll see a really big institutional adoption the next year. But I think they'll struggle actually things to find outside of stablecoins, and that's where Flare's pitching itself. It's okay if you want to do institutional business, but you want to do more. We've got a fantastic layer for you to build things on that is nicely decentralized and gives you amazing compute. So that leads into Flare 2.0, which is something I announced at the kind of tail end of Q2, but we don't have to cover that yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really nice overview you gave, and I believe that as well. And a lot of the advantages for DeFi and blockchain seems to be, of course, very appealing to these institutions for the very same reason almost that we are excited for. It's just a different, not only magnitude, but also application, right? Like transparency, auditability, accountability, everything is like public. You can verify these things. That is very exciting to me, of course, and it seems like it's very also exciting for institutions. Even, yeah.
I give you like one small example that comes to mind. It's like, trade finance is the type of finance that allows the entire world to basically send and receive products. There would be like no consumer economy if we didn't have some form of trade finance. There's tons of product sitting on the sea, tons of product sitting on, in cargo depots, in ports, in trains. All of that product someone has financed. But it has been the preserve of maybe 10 merchant banks to finance the entire global trade end to end for the last 60 years. And that is great for those banks, although they're becoming less and less interested in it because the cost of doing business is higher because of things like sanctions and trying to figure out who you're actually doing business with. So there's huge corridors that are becoming underserved. And one of the things that being able to move finance, like finance that touches the real world on chain, does is it enables like individuals, me and you, to get involved in global finance in a way that is like sort of sensible and, if built correctly, relatively low risk. And this is like the power that this technology can bring to bear, is cracking open a market that has been controlled by 10 people for 60 years.
Correct.
10 entities for 60 years.
Yes.
And ultimately allowing people to get a better yield, which is really important, than they could get just by keeping their money in a bank, by doing something more interesting financially.
Right. Yeah, this cross-border, like global nature of it is probably the, as you said, the most exciting one here. There's also some interesting questions, of course, that would come up with, let's say you have a financial product, a DeFi product, or a financial product in that sense. Jurisdictions become very blurry, right? It's on the blockchain. Maybe it's a smart contract deployed somewhere. Like where are the borders nowadays then? And because everybody can access it, and that is something, it has pros and cons probably, depending on from which perspective.
This is where data becomes very valuable, because you can't go to court in the blockchain. So a trade can only be settled by, well, what data is, did this product get delivered? Do I have the data for it? Can I expose that data on chain to settle the trade? So that's a very simple way of talking about something that's very complex, but
right.
Ultimately, the idea is if you can get the data, you can open the market up.
Yeah, and we kind of right into this now already. So to go into that direction, there have been a lot of projects that I've been seeing, specifically now coming from the XRP ledger, talking about that yield. You mentioned that it's very important. Opportunity cost. People want to, capital flows where the yield is, and of course under consideration of risk. But it goes typically where the yield is, and on the XRP ledger, that I would say landscape is right now developing, and we are seeing a lot of projects pushing through that. And so, there's various terms, for example, staking. I just want to make it very clear that, staking as that form, we don't really have on the XRP ledger. Actually, we don't. That's a clear no. If you don't mind, you want to explain from your point of view, also from your expertise, what is staking? So for people that they know what is staking.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think there's a lot of conflation of the term staking in the XRP community, with things that are not, really staking. So for instance, putting your money into an AMM is not staking. It is being a liquidity provider. Putting your money into a thing that calls itself staking, but is actually where they use your XRP to take trades on centralized exchanges is not staking.
Correct.
That is essentially investing in some kind of unregulated fund. And I think there's like, if I've looked at most of the projects, many of them are misusing the term staking. Staking is sort of fundamentally how a proof of stake network is secured. So on the XRP ledger, the way it is kind of secured is it uses a UNL, unique node list, right? And you have these overlaps of the UNL, and this basically forms the network topology, and that is how consensus occurs within the XRP. On Bitcoin, you have nodes, but you also have miners, and miners expend energy in order to collectively confirm a transaction. In a proof of stake network, you have a validator, and a validator stakes to their own validator that is called self-formed, and then other people can also stake to that validator. It's called delegated stake. And specifically, ultimately, the validator's power is determined by how much stake they have between their own stake and the stake that is delegated towards. So if there's 1,000 validators and they each have a certain amount of stake, that dictates their power in sending messages around in the network that then ultimately come to consensus. It's a slightly simplified version of it, but that is what staking is. It is the conference of economic value of the token towards a particular validator.
Correct.
Or some set of validators, depending on how the staking works, that defines how consensus is reached in the network. And that is staking, and that is like the definition of staking. And participating in financial products is not staking.
Thank you. Very good that you made that also very clear. And I always try to make that also very clear, but because people, they just read lines and then get confused by what's going on. But it's very, very important to make that distinction, because it comes also with the risk, the implication, right? The risk factor is totally different between you using it to, let's say, delegate or stake for a validator, then give it to maybe a money market fund that goes in and or an AMM, as you said, with a permanent loss. It's very, very different.
Absolutely. So with staking on the whole, so if you stake Flare on Flare, we don't have a slashing risk, but you may not get rewards if your validator doesn't do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
On other networks, there can be slashing, whereby the stake that is delegated to the validator gets slashed. Usually, it's only accrued rewards that is slashed. And so, slashing is a very rare occurrence, and it's only a percentage. So the risk is very, very low generally in staking, in real staking. The risk, obviously, of impermanent loss in an AMM, which is not staking, is a very different and much higher risk, depending on what assets are in the AMM. So, if it's 2 stable coins in the AMM, the risk is much lower. If it's a stable coin against a volatile coin like the crypto, the impermanent loss risk is much higher. If you're staking to an entity that is effectively a fund that hasn't done any KYC or AML on you, I would say that the risk is extremely high because they're breaking the law to start. That's if they haven't done AML and KYC on you, to me that's a real indication of who they are as people. They haven't done just the basics to be very compliant. And so to define staking, it's to stake to secure a network, and that is what is being built by institutional partner of Flare. I'm not going to name them on this call because they want to announce who they are and do their own marketing and things like that. But we have defined using our protocols a way to create a staking system for XRP that allows effectively XRP to be staked to secure services in the form of blockchains or other services that are a form of distributed network. Could be like an Oracle service, could be, and we can come onto this, and I'd love to come onto this, a machine learning service. But ultimately, the concept of what's being built on Flare is the ability to stake XRP into some service to receive yield, and that yield is in the token that is offered by that service. We can't create XRP yield out of thin air. The only way you could create XRP out of some form of product, it would be if it were a financial product. And it's, we're not building a financial product, we are building a security product whereby XRP can be used to secure other services.
Very well said. And Thanos, I saw you unmute. I'm pretty sure you want to chime in here as well to the staking topic.
Yeah, I think Hugo, for the most part, touched upon it, how we've thought about restaking overall, or just the XRP staking product. To be clear, when you put your XRP into anything on chain, like there's different parameters that you're agreeing to, right? If you put in, let's say, XRP into a lending protocol, or like any of these other types of protocols, they have the ability to rehypothecate that specific asset, right? So if you deposit USDC into a lending protocol, or let's say RLUSD into a lending protocol, they are then giving that RLUSD to someone on the other side and lending that out, right? So in theory, that's rehypothecation of an asset. In staking, you are agreeing to a specific set of rules and consensus that your stake would abide by for a specific validator, right? So it's very, very much different from liquidity providing on chain versus staking to generate yield from specific validated services, right?
Right. Yeah. Thanks for also giving that context here too. So one thing, because we're in the middle of that discussion specifically here, and deep in the weeds of it, is like the two questions that typically I would say are very, very important to always ask and have in mind when looking at these things is when we talk now we need to define what staking is, but even beyond now, yield opportunities or opportunities in general, DeFi, when we talk about DeFi, is where does the yield come from, right? Very, very classic. And the second one is it custodial, self-custodial, right? Like, what are the risks to my holdings? Am I in control? Am I not in control? How does it work? So I want to hear from you, Hugo, for these two things specifically, where did the yield come from? Maybe you can give like a specific example for your with Flare, what you guys doing, just so that people understand where that is coming from and why it is so important to understand where the yield is coming from. Because we all have seen this, where you see like all these people say, hey, I'm going to use this product, or I'm using this service, it's so attractive, and then you see the yield and you ask, oh, cool, that is very attractive indeed, but where does the yield come from? And then it's like shrugging shoulders. I find this very, very dangerous.
So the yield comes from in the staking system that is being built by our partner for XRP using Flare. The yield comes from ultimately the emissions of whatever service you are using.
Correct.
So if you look at any proof of stake network, they emit tokens as a way to reward the validators for participating. The validators that have staked and the people that have staked to those validators as a reward for securing the network. So Next year, once Flare is fully distributed, our yield will be roughly just a little shy of 5% on total tokens. So, like any proof of stake based system, the yield is coming from providing your XRP as security and getting paid in the token of that service in order to for essentially giving that network or service security.
So basically, it comes there either from the protocol, right? Because if you secure with the protocol, let's say in a classic proof of stake, it comes from the protocol. But if you secure other, in your case, other apps or chains with it, then it comes from those hosts, right? That they would have to pay.
Yeah. So if you're securing a chain through the staking service, that is effectively the same as delegating your XRP to a validator on that chain.
Correct. It's no different.
Yeah, do you want to chime in, Thomas? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, for sure. So, with the staking protocol, right? You would stake your XRP, and then you're providing, let's say, security to specific types of validators, or what in the stake or in the restaking world they call AVS, which are actively validated services, right? These actively validated services are essentially types of protocols that exist with a specific set of rules that you would stake to, right? So a lot of what has been talked about for AVSs has been pre-confirmations. So the ability for chains to essentially settle faster with some guarantees to like what that chain needs to be able to come to consensus faster before the block is mined. So pre-confirmations have been talked about a lot within the EVM world. There's also different types of protocols that you can build that would have stake, right? So Hyperlane is another one that people use on EigenLayer to stake to. So that's specifically how yield on an ongoing basis would be generated for people that are staking, right? It's staking to specific AVSs or protocols that have a specific set of rules as to what they need, and then provide and pay for that security.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that paying for the security is essentially like when the protocol would, again, a classic proof of stake would pay the people who are putting their stake up for the validator, so that essentially you are confirming blocks. That's your reward for doing so.
Yep, exactly. You are agreeing to a specific set of rules that a protocol needs security for. Let's say during some period of time, or for some specific like action, and they're willing to pay for that security during that, like to execute that specific action, right?
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Now that we know, okay, that is how staking works, and this is how you try to get this basically out for other chains and own app or app chains. And we also know it's not possible on the XRP ledger. Now is of course the question, how does that connection work? How can someone then on the XRP ledger, when they have, let's say, XRP, do all of these things without basically, because XRP only exists on the XRP ledger, it cannot leave it, like that. How does it work? How does it connect? Do basically validators on Flare run XRP ledger nodes to monitor these things, and where are the funds go? This is like the second one. Is it self-custodial, not custodial? How does that work?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let's try to break. You want to break this down?
No,
I'm happy to.
I think you should give it a stab, Hugo.
Okay. So we have with Flare, we have data protocols. We're building effectively a bridge between XRP and Flare using those data protocols. We introduced XRP v1.1 as a concept not too long ago, and we'll be upgrading from XRP v1.1 to XRP v2, which uses protocol managed wallets. So let's just deal with protocol managed wallets. version of XRP, because like remember, ultimately, protocol managed wallets allows Claire to set up an address on the XRP ledger that can only make transactions based on an output from the ledger. This is the long protocol managed wallet, there's got a long blog on it, but ultimately an address that can only make transactions based on Claire's consensus. So it happens on Claire, or some data comes from another network, and this is the key bit, whereby essentially you have a staked position and it's staked to another network, let's say an L2 or a sidechain, let's say an XRP based sidechain. We run nodes on the XRP ledger, we run nodes on the network that if you want to stake to, and we're able to determine, we're able to essentially prove onto Flare what the validators on that sidechain have done. We can prove that they've been good, we can prove they've been bad, which allows the rewards to be apportioned or slashed, if slashing exists. That effectively is, we have a bridge for the XRP, it gets staked, it gets apportioned to a set of validators, whether it's effectively, like, let's just use the XRP sidechain as the example. Those validators get power on that sidechain based on how much XRP is staked to them, and they receive rewards. Those rewards effectively go down to Claire, where the XRP is staked, and are apportioned to those people who have staked to that sidechain. Now, it gets a lot more complicated than that when you start staking tokens and yield strategies, but that is the basic setup of how it works.
Do you want to also chime in? Because I wasn't sure if you also want to do context.
No, but I think Hugo covered it there.
Perfect. Yeah, because typically the difficult things are, we mentioned there, where is the yield coming from, and securing the network or apps is very straightforward, right? It's not something more complicated or a very difficult DeFi strategy behind it with a lot of moving parts. It's like you putting something on stake for a host chain that says, hey, it's hard to bootstrap a network, so I might as well, use something, use a service like that. So that makes very clear where the yield comes from. Also, it's very easy to say there's then no yield if there's, of course, no user or no app or chain that would host something like that there. But there would be, of course, yield. The more yield, the more people would use it. And then it becomes a competitive environment. So that dynamic makes very much sense. I would still love to dive in a little bit more into the self-custodial part and to see how that works. For example, the slashing and things like that. If someone would misbehave or anything like this, how can someone ensure, or how can you guys ensure to have basically these funds being able to slash or similar, but also keep it like, still non-custodial, as you said. I think that goes with the protocol managed wallets that comes into that play. But before we go into this, so just stop on that, I see Devon has his hands up, and feel free to chime in, Devon, as we go. You've been here.
Yes, that was actually going to be the exact question that I asked. And to add on to the self-custodial part, could you also explain if there's a time lock period for the asset as well, and how long it could be, if you could expand on that?
Sure, I'll deal with the custodial part. I'm not sure we can talk about the time locks at the moment, because I think, that it's not, that is going to be very dependent on the product and each individual actively validated service, right? So, each one will have their own rules. But ultimately, the custodial bit is quite simple. Rather than using a custodian, you're depositing your XRP to a protocol managed wallet. This is not a custodian. this is a wallet that can only make transactions based on something that happens on Flare. It's that simple. It basically extends Flare's consensus onto the XRP ledger. So you can think of it as, let's try and break this down into an analogy, or like a very simple use case to kind of build the understanding. So let's say you want to, and this is not staking, this is a financial product, but let's say you just want to have a bet with your friend on XRP's price at the end of June. And today the XRP price is, last I looked, about 1.9. And you want to say, your friend says, I think it'll be 5, let's say. And you say, well, I think it'll be 4. And you both put up XRP. Where'd you put it? Okay, so you would send your XRP to the protocol managed wallet, which would hold it based on an application on Flare has been written that allows people to express these kind of views. And that application, at the end of the term, at the end of the period by which the bet is running, will take the price from the Flare time series oracle of XRP and effectively decide if it will say to the protocol managed wallet, okay, you need to send 10 XRP to Bob. Or if the other person in the bet is called Freddie, you need to send 10 XRP to Freddie, right? Like it's entirely decentralized. There's no people that can change that. It's entirely based on having written an application on Flare that can trigger a transaction in the protocol managed wallet. Does that make sense? Can I break that down more?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, because it makes also a lot more sense when we think about because when we think of staking again, we need to go back to the original idea. It's secure network, and if you do it in a classic direct way, let's say you have a validator, let's say Ethereum, you would stake with your validator, self-bond, as you said, and if I misbehave or whatever, right, I get slashed. But in order to have that, the protocol needs to have basically ability to do that, right? So the protocol acts there in a way that it can do that even. And I think this is the only way that anyone can do that is just with the protocol itself. It cannot be someone else, right? It has to be the protocol.
Yeah, you need protocol, and you need the data, and you need a smart contract engine that allows the protocol to process that data. And that's and you need a way to administer the XRP, which is what the protocol managed wallet gives you. And so all of these things can be built on this stack that we have built. And all of these things can be built, most importantly, without essentially just using consensus, not using a centralized party.
Okay, so if someone would want to do that, they would need to put it into the protocol managed wallet. And that protocol managed wallet, what kind of capabilities does it have? Can I, as a user, still move funds in and out, things like that?
No, you as a user, you can not move funds in and out. You can deposit to a protocol managed wallet in order to get something on Flare. Whether that is to participate in, let's say, a bet between your friend or to stake XRP. And then, let's take the staking XRP example. You staked XRP and you have received a liquid staking token for a particular set of services. Someone has created a liquid staking token, so they essentially, maybe they're a DAO. They decide, okay, your XRP gets staked to this entity or this entity, this set of validators or this set of validators. This is a very common thing in proof of stake based networks. There are liquid staking providers who basically do the job on behalf of the community to apportion stake And again, it's done in a decentralized way, so it's not like they can just get their hands on the XRP. It's done with a contract, smart contract. So they receive effectively the ability to deploy the XRP to a validator and only to a validator of the service, not deploy the XRP to anywhere else. So you've now received a liquid staking. And so, sorry?
Yeah, if you want to continue, sorry, I will.
Yeah, so you've now received a liquid staking token, and you want to now want to get your XRP back. So you send that liquid staking token back to the staking contract, and this then effectively is like a redeem, and it sends Flare comes to consensus over that, and the protocol managed wallet sends you back your XRP.
Yeah, so just to clarify there, the XRP is always available to the user to take in and out of the protocol managed wallet, right? And that XRP is held in a trust minimized way, right? Like it's hosted in a trusted execution environment, which is a lot of what we've been talking about recently. And if you look at trusted execution environments more broadly, it's becoming the way to facilitate a lot of like crypto infrastructure in a decentralized way, right? So if you look at Flashbots on Ethereum, they've moved all of their infrastructure into TEs. Bala and a lot of these other networks have also been looking at TEs to help scale and use trust minimized execution environments, right?
Can you quickly maybe explain what trust execution environments
Yeah,
are?
so trusted execution environments are essentially it's essentially here, let's put it this way, a server or computer that has encrypted memory that no one can access, right? So no one can access your specific XRP unless there's a specific set of instructions that allow it to be accessed, right? So it's very similar to how a smart contract operates, right? And these servers would be hosted by numerous different people that then allow for those specific set of instructions to be executed within that encrypted memory. That memory cannot physically be taken by anyone, which a lot of people talk about seeds and how you get seeds. So, I mean, my background comes from Bitcoin custody. I used to help people learn and understand how you custody your own Bitcoin, right? So I'm also very sensitive towards this topic. What we'd always tell people is well, you don't want to store your seed on your computer because if anyone ever gets access to your memory, they would be able to essentially extract the seed from the memory. But if that memory is encrypted and no one can access that memory, well, you can store a seed there safely, right? So that's the idea behind protocol managed wallets and how we think about like the custodial, non-custodial side.
So they are basically chips, servers. Is it like how can people think about that?
Yeah,
Are they basically machines?
The way to think about it is it's an enclave, or let's say, honestly, you can think about it very similar to how like a smart contract operates, right? It's an enclave which does specific sets of instructions.
That must be my internet.
Does specific sets of instructions that you give it. What those specific things are. So you have a smart contract, think about it as the way that you have specific methods or functions on that smart contract, right? Very similarly to that. No one can access that specific memory without like destroying the memory physically. And those sets of instructions can only be operated as long as there's certain parameters that are agreed upon and then executed on.
Do you know who's manufacturing these?
Yeah, so Intel, AMD, NVIDIA. Actually, not AMD, but Intel and NVIDIA, and there's one other manufacturer that I think that we speak to. So if you can, in theory, launch trusted execution environments that help manage these protocol managed wallets in, let's say, numerous different locations that all help control and access or control and instruct those specific wallets, it's essentially a very trust minimized way of facilitating transactions on the XRPL and on Flare at the same time.
That's interesting. So basically, also what you said, they basically get also more and more adoption on other chains. I mean, you mentioned the flash bots and so on because they have like very much advantages that people cannot view them.
Yeah.
Prior to something happening, so it's very good for these sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it almost gives you like GPU level or CPU level compute. I would say like GPU level compute without the security risks of losing keys, right? Or let's say without the security risks of your seed being exposed, which is major in crypto.
Let's go to Shellfish and then Shellfish, go ahead.
Hi, Hugo. Hi, Thanos. I had a question. So I had caught a video from a few months back, and it was talking about Santiago building on Flare, and I was wondering, I believe his was
XD5.
long term. This could spark more institutional grade derivatives across chains.
Yeah, for sure. So I think very plainly, to put it this way, obviously you saw Ripple acquire like a prime brokerage today.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
For $1.25 billion. That is absolutely no joke. At the same time, Coinbase is making a push to acquire Deribit, right, which allows you to structure option calls. And so historically, what you see on chain that has been the most popular has been perps, which we have a few perp dexes that have launched, including Santiago's, which we're still iterating on to make it better and more user friendly. And I just think more broadly, like perps have been the most popular instrument of leverage to trade within crypto, and you're seeing a lot of institutions use perps in numerous different ways. I mean, I'd be happy to have like an entire other discussion on as to like how people are leveraging perps to trade, but institutions and a lot of funds use perps to trade within crypto. And I think options more broadly, as markets do mature, they become more popular. So you'll start to see more volume on options. You'll start to see more liquidity increase. And the great thing about XRP and Flare and Bitcoin is that they trade 24/7, right? So these options are extremely malleable, and there's very different ways that you can kind of structure them. So yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about options in crypto. I think that it's really gonna unleash a side of users and institutions on chain specifically as well. And I think Flare is striving to help build that for XRP users and alongside the XRPL sidechain.
Thanks, Thanos. I'm sure that in Saturday I will be reaching out, and I'm sure there's quite a few people in the community that would love to have another side with you.
Yeah, I'm also thinking here, Hugo, just from, of course, hearing all of this is very much thought through, but this also shows specifically how much more work it needs to do these things in a decentralized manner versus shortcutting and doing it in a centralized manner, right? Because all of these things wouldn't be absolutely not necessary if I just say, give me, your money or something like this. Like all of these things we could just skip, but to do it in a decentralized manner, it takes so much more work.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spent a long time, building out Flare, building out the data protocols. We can't do any of this without the data protocols in a decentralized way. Of course, I could have gone to a custodian and said I want to make a bridge.
Yep.
And I want to handle people's XRP, and I want to use it in
Yep.
financial products. I could have done that really quickly.
Yep.
Probably in a couple of weeks. But I would also have to KYC and AML everyone in order to do that, which then you're really just back in conventional finance.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well, there was been, I'm keeping it short and sweet here. I mean, the hour blast through without me even thinking how fast that was going here. I really enjoyed it, and 100% we definitely have to do it again. And I see Death Ranger has his hands up. We definitely, go with Death Ranger first before we go to the outro.
Thank you, Ben, for having me here today, and Hugo for making time, and Danos for being here. I have been long time waiting for this protocol to go live, and been a supporter of an enthusiast of the Flare network and the Songbird ecosystem. And it's been a very long journey for you, Hugo. And really, I'd like to personally hear just where you feel like you guys are as a team and your accomplishments that you guys have made. And then, somewhat relatively short term for your guys' future and where you really want to see things go. And the developments that you'd really like to see being done on top of Flare from an application standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. How's the team and everything? I mean, the team's operating in a way that I've never seen it operate before, extremely well. Protocols getting shipped, they've been shipped, they're getting, we're much finer running engine than we were, let's say, 2 years ago. And we're much more capable of, sticking to timelines. Part of that's having a larger team, part of that's just having a lot more experience in managing teams and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I'm very, very happy with where we are as a team in terms of where we're going. I mean, I think it's very interesting to me that Ripple bought a prime broker today, and they'll do very well out of that. But it's amusing to me because I spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is missing in DeFi? What is missing in the space? And one of the things that is really missing is a decentralized prime brokerage function. One of the things prime brokers do is they extend margin to traders against their existing position. So you might have large amount of Tesla stock, and you might go to your prime broker and say, hey, I really want to buy, I don't know, IBM. Not sure why you would, but whatever. I need to borrow against this Tesla stock. Prime broker will assess the risk of the Tesla stock and lend you some margin and set margin levels where you get liquidated and all this kind of stuff. But this doesn't exist as a crypto protocol.
Correct.
And what we're building, and this doesn't exist as a crypto protocol, as a decentralized protocol. It obviously is a huge thing in traditional finance, and that's what Ripple purchased. They purchased a traditional finance prime broker. But it'd be kind of cool if it was a protocol, but it can't be a protocol today. First thing you need for it to be a protocol is protocol managed wallets. Second thing you need is vast compute. You need vast compute because you need to be able to assess the risk of the various different assets that people would be willing to essentially extend margin to. But you also need that compute such that if you're offering this as a product in a decentralized way, someone can't come in and change that compute and suddenly apply zero risk to Fartcoin, enabling a large amount of money to be lent to people that want to take Fartcoin positions, when it should only be less than 1% of that money should be lent to people that want to take Fartcoin positions.
Correct.
So the question is, how do you get a very large amount of compute, but make it safe so that it can't be altered? And this is where we're going with TEs. So we're building protocol managed wallets so that it can hold assets. And we're going with TEs in the direction of, I want to be able to run really complex models, really complex risk models, really heavy compute, applications. And I want to be able to do this in a way that you can't be rugged. And so this then, if you join those two things together, safe compute and protocol managed wallets, then you can build a totally decentralized prime broker. And that's kind of really interesting to me. So hopefully that answers, your question of where we want to go in the future. It's
Yes.
basically, we've got the data now. We're getting more data. We're building the bridges. Now we want to do the compute.
Love it.
Fantastic.
Love it.
And, you know, I mean, for this conversation, it was, I mean, went by so quick, and it was so good to talk all together with it about this very topic. Plus, you know, the XRP ledger specifically is expanding so much in its ecosystem, cross-chain, interoperability, and it's like a huge ecosystem and multi-chain ecosystem now. And it's very, very good to see that so many people are working together to make it seamless. People can utilize multiple products, platforms, services, and not limited to maybe only what is available, maybe on their own chain, or even less within, let's say, their platform that they are typically using. One thing I want to say as well is, Hugo, I saw that you're also going to be at XRPL Apex in Singapore, which is fantastic.
I am indeed. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, that's really cool. I saw you as a speaker, and I pinned up also at the top the XRP Ledger Apex for those who want to register and get a ticket and chime in. Definitely do so. I will be there as well. A lot of people from the community will be there. So if you can make it there, it would be fantastic to meet you and have good discussions over there with the audience. Of course, Hugo will be there too. And I also want to say, if you cannot make it, that's also important to say, if you cannot make it, don't worry, there will be live sessions and live streams. So even people who may not be able to participate physically, virtually, I'm sure there will be done a lot that people can also participate in that. Yeah, well, with that being said, first, Hugo and Thanos, thank you very much for having a discussion. It was very, very insightful, also educational. I love that. So that people have a good idea of what goes into, like, all the work to make it decentralized, to know where the yield is coming from, all of these things, so custodial solutions, product managed wallets, all of these things. And work together, and it's very, very important for people to have this on their radar. So whenever you go around and see for opportunities, yield, whatever, that you put these questions high on your list and check whatever that fits for you. But that is very, very important. Specifically, I want to reiterate for us on the XRP Ledger, because we are kind of more new to the DeFi ecosystem, having AMAMs, yield, and all of these things, projects being built on top, and specifically the community to go through these learnings a little bit more smoother, end up with, hopefully not that many mistakes and issues. So, yeah. With that being said, again, thanks, Hugo, Thanos, for coming, and everybody else for listening. I'm definitely going to do it next time again as well. And wish everyone a nice afternoon.
All right, looks like that.
Thank you so much for having me.
So yeah, it looks like that that ended. So that was really, 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 really an interesting conversation. Very interesting conversation. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna leave this here. Appreciate you guys hanging out and taking a listen to that. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that spaces there. That would be cool. What are your guys' thoughts on the spaces that we just listened to with Hugo and Vet? I was really encouraged. What's up with the streaming here? By Vet's willingness to, it's a big, Vet is an XRP guy, XRPL guy, right? Willingness to have Hugo on, because I think it's important. Let me stop sharing here. I think it's massively important that people like Vet are educated on what is and what is not, right? I think that's important because, that is one of the choirs. If you were one of the people in the choir taking a message to the congregation, right? That is the XRP community or in the XRPL community. So I think it's important for him to level up his knowledge, right? His knowledge and skill set, right? Risk comes from a lack of knowledge and a lack of skills. That's where risk comes from, right? You don't know enough about staking. You don't know enough about true staking. You don't know enough about how staking works. You don't know enough about yield. You don't know enough about where yield comes from. So your knowledge set is low and your skill set is low, because if you don't have the right knowledge, you can't acquire the skills to participate, right? And so this is what risk ultimately is. Risk is ultimately on you and it's on me. That's what risk is. How much do I know, right, about this thing and how to do it? That's the real risk, right? That's 95% of the risk, right? The other risk is the UI UX interface risk, the protocol risk, right? That type of stuff, right? The smart contract risk, that's the other 5%. But 95% of the risk is on you, right? It's on me. That's where the risk comes from. So I appreciate Vet willing to hold the spaces so that he can level up his knowledge set. And I think, I know that what Hugo is saying, right, in an indirect way is be careful of what you really ask for, or hearken back to why you really got in crypto. The reason why there's DeFi and there's crypto, in my view, from the white paper on, was, listen, we have been screwed by the centralized entity, by the intermediary known as TradFi. We have been screwed by them, raped, pillared, ripped off, whatever you want to call it. And crypto and or DeFi offers you an opportunity to walk away from that, to not be beholden to that. Right? Not just get rich, not just, well, they rape and pillaging us, but I picked the right crypto, so I'm good. My crypto just 40x'd, so I'm good. But the traditional financial system is still raping, pillaging through, and ripping off everyone else. Clamoring for us to trust them. And we just say, oh, well, there's no other option. So what crypto and DeFi in particular, what Flare Networks is doing, is saying, no, 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 no. There is another option. We can build, that's what listen, listen to what he said about Ripple's acquisition. I think it's important to get it. He said, Ripple's purchasing of this prime brokerage thing is interesting and amusing to me. Right? Because he says, what is missing in DeFi? What's missing in DeFi is this little prime brokerage thing, this entity that is decentralized. So, in other words, what that prime brokerage does, have it done in a decentralized, have it as a protocol that does the same thing. And he goes on to say, this is what Flare Networks is building. You understand? And the whole time I'm listening to the spaces, I keep going back to what I said in a live stream. Rachel W., appreciate you checking in. Bubba Smith. What I said was, look, for me, there's just two different approaches, and I did a video on it. There's two different approaches to institutional DeFi. Ripple has one. Flare Networks has one. We could argue about which one is right, but I lean towards Flare Networks' approach to institutional DeFi. I lean towards that because I believe that they want Flare Networks, their goal, the vision is true decentralization, where we don't have to rely on this company and or the company that was just purchased for $1.25 billion. We're going to cover this here, this thread from Brad Garlinghouse, but I'm pretty sure that Garlinghouse said, making the prime brokerage better and bigger, making that entity bigger and better. Pretty sure that's what he said. And I'm gonna go through the thread. And what I'm saying for me is Flynn Network's approach is building a protocol that is not the entity and making the protocol that is a decentralized and not an entity bigger and better and secure and scaling. You understand the difference? There's a difference there. Okay? The guy said, I've been following Flare for a long time. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. And my answer to that is be careful what you ask for. Because what crypto has been about year to date is the shortcut to come out with the product so we can get fees, so people can get fees, so people can say that they did something and they built out this thing. And again, the thing's in the air. Just take the shortcut. Retail is clamoring, they're crying. Just take the shortcut and give them something. But I would argue, I mean, hey, maybe it is not you. Maybe you do want to be beholden to an entity. But I would argue that most of us came here because we were sick and tired. The white paper was about being sick and tired of the entity that is TradFi pillaging through, raping, and ripping off retail. And I would argue that most people came into crypto to rid themselves of that dream of not being beholden to the TradFi institution. That's what I would argue. This is what the PMWs are about. This is what the trusted executed environments are about. Truly, truly, truly believe that. And it's just really, what do you want? What do you really want? My two different approaches is Ripple's approach and this Flare Networks approach. And I lean more towards Flare Networks approach. He said in the spaces, 10 entities essentially running the traditional financial system. 10 institutions. 10. All of the global TradFi. 10 institutions. This is a guy who was in that space. It's just 10 of them ruling the world's traditional financial system. Is that cool? How has that been to you? How well have you fared with that system? Feel like you're doing okay? Or no? Because the way I see it, the way the system is now, when I deposit my money in the bank, it's gone. It's not my money. It's their money. And they're using it and making money from the money and saying, thank you very much. Here's 0.001%, maybe, or 0.01%, maybe. Under the guise of convenience, under the guise of safe and FDIC. Really? When are we going to wake up to the idea of FDIC is a scam? Like, when are we going to do our homework, do our due diligence, and understand that the FDIC is bankrupt? There's no such thing. Your money is not insured, it's transferred until the next bank run. And then it's transferred until the next bank run. And then when you throw in the UCC Articles 8 and 9, then you understand that it's still not your money. It's still not your money. And if when crap hits the fan, and all of a sudden when you're in court, because the entity by law gets to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection for the entity, not you. It's for the entity. And under the law, under Chapter 11 bankruptcy, those assets that you supplied are no longer your assets. Or you can have this other thing where the protocol says those assets are always your assets. Which one do you want? It's really that simple. Which one do you really want? And my thing is, the vast majority of people do not know and understand. Again, knowledge and skill set is low. So they don't even know. You know how many people today don't understand FDIC? You know how many people really don't understand that when they deposit their money into a bank, it's not their money? Do you understand that? Those numbers. I'm telling you, it's 9 out of 10 people don't understand that the money that they put deposit in the bank is not their money the second they deposit it there. Anyway, I digress. We're going to go over Brad Garling's house announcement of their acquisition. And like I put in the thumbnail, what does it mean for the XRP holder? Or here's what it means for the XRP holder. Ralph Kahneman has an interesting take on it. I'm going to share with you guys as well. But let me welcome everyone to the stream. I appreciate you guys being here. Pookie was first in the building. Appreciate that, my guy. Mr. Fooey here. Checked in. Colin Hughes, Jay Corn, what's going on, bro? Auntie Fowl, I appreciate you checking in, Miss. Triple G Facts Vet, thanks for hanging out. The Muskegon Aristocrat is in the building. Appreciate you being here. What's going on, Bubba Smith? Bubba Smith says, afternoon, CJ, watching on delay. This is only my second cycle. Interesting. What's going on? Now, is it normal? Is it? No, it's not normal because the digital assets space is affected by the global macro picture, and the global macro is not normal. It's not normal. It's in a different kind of thing right now, and it affects the digital asset space. B says, I'm not impressed with XDFi, to be honest. When it went live, I couldn't access my account. I was testing it. I was testing with it. Could be a regional issue. Yeah, I haven't had any problems with XDFi, but I only, I got the stuff. I'm not a futures person. I think it's a novel, very, very novel idea. I love the KYCT thing. I think that's interesting. Pookie says, Blair is about to change the game, indeed. What's going on? Move accordingly. How are you, bro? Appreciate you being here. Pookie says, CJ, will Flair be in your 90% bucket? I hope so. I hope so. It's not currently, but I hope so. It's in my 10% bucket, but I hope it will. And I will say this, I believe that it will. The Muskegon aristocrat said, sold all my Flare. You're convincing me to buy back into Flare. I hear you, bro. I hear you. I hear you, right? So when a guy in the space has said, it's been a long time, like, what do you want? You want the shortcutted version? Right? Do you want the shortcut? Because that's what just crypto space and DeFi has been about. It's just been about the shortcut. Let's just get this thing out. Right? That's what it's been about. Or do we really want, again, something that is truly ours, truly non-dependent upon a centralized entity, where our assets are our assets and they can't be taken away in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy or any other kind of bankruptcy, where we're responsible for the security of the assets to the best of our ability. I'm telling you, the hoodwink and bamboozle was that the banks were going to provide the security of your assets for you. They're going to do it for you. Well, most of the people ain't going to come in crypto if they got to manage their own stuff. Why not? They're managing their own stuff now. You never tell a person, you've never told your neighbor, hey, don't get a wallet. You've never said, don't get a wallet that holds your Visa cards and your credit cards and your fiat dollars. You've never said that to anyone, ever. Don't get a wallet. It's too hard to manage it. Keep it safe. Don't get one. Never said that. What's the difference? Seed phrases and writing down things. Why don't you think that's going to change? It's changing now. You got a lot of protocols out there with the Google login and or access to crypto. It's evolving. But this whole idea that you can't do something, why are we believing that? Why are we believing that? Yeah, it's this thing out there. We can't do it. Like, why are we buying into that? I'm not sure. All right, let's cover this Brad Garlinghouse thing here. Who said that? Oh, I should do it. Yeah, me and Mickey B. Fresh hooked up on a couple videos before the Muskegon aristocrat. It was fun. Mickey B is my dude. All right, let me find this Brad Garlinghouse deal. There it is here. Let's take a gander at this and read beneath the, read underneath the hood here. Take a look underneath the hood here of this post. Brad Garlinghouse says, today, Ripple announced the acquisition of Hidden Road. I don't know, I was calling it a different name, but Hidden Road for $1.25 billion. One of the largest deals ever in the crypto space. But the price tag isn't what's most important. It's this deal. It's that this deal makes a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for crypto to access the largest and most trusted traditional markets and vice versa. Prime brokers, along with other key functions historically managed by banks for the most part, like Hidden Road, have proven themselves as the quote-unquote trusted intermediary for the largest hedge funds. Do you understand that statement there? Do you understand? I thought, at least I was, and I got into the digital asset space to not have to trust an intermediary where the laws are in their favor. trusted intermediary for the largest hedge funds, market makers, over-the-counter desks, quant traders, and more. Ripple has been a customer of Hidden Road for years, and we know their breadth of expertise firsthand, clearing $3 trillion with the T, all capitals, by the way, $3 trillion annually for 300 plus of the top financial institutions globally. This is the capital and activity, okay, for the XRP holders here, which I am one. This is the capital and activity that will tap into XRP and the XRP's ledger's bread and butter, instant, efficient, scalable, and low cost movement of value. Okay? Instead of waiting for 24 hours to settle trades through fiat rails, Hidden Road will be using the XRPL for clearing a portion of trades. And most consequentially, using RLUSD as collateral across its prime brokerage services, including crypto and traditional instruments, right? So including cross-asset trades. With this deal and the backing of Ripple's significant balance sheet, Hidden Road will listen, I just want to say this again. Just read this, listen to this carefully. With this deal and the backing of Ripple's significant balance sheet, Hidden Road will exponentially expand its capacity. So Hidden Road is going to win here. You know, the centralized, trusted intermediary. So the centralized, trusted intermediary is going to be benefiting from this. Right? That's what it says. Hidden Road will exponentially expand its capacity to service its pipeline and become the largest non-bank prime broker globally. So centralized entity is going to get bigger. But my question is, how does that benefit me? Right? Because everything's awesome until it isn't awesome. And if there's a challenge with Hidden Road, who's protected and who is not protected? That is you and me. We're not protected. Now, there's talks about changing it in Congress. That is a fact. There's talks about your assets, even in the Chapter 11 situation. There's talks about it. But it's not a thing. It's not a law. It's not written in bankruptcy laws. It's just not there. Ripple and Hidden Road combined are a generational leap forward, ready to bring the worlds of traditional and decentralized finance together. And again, there's Ripple approach to institutional DeFi and this Flare Networks approach. And I lean more towards Flare Networks approach, where we don't have to have this centralized, trusted intermediary. Now, it's cool if a trusted entity wants to build something and that finished product is not having to trust. You understand? That was the whole purpose of the white paper in Bitcoin. Whole purpose. Right? That was the whole purpose of it, in my view. So guys, do me a favor. I don't know. Why is this doing this? All right, there we go. Do me a favor and hit the like button. That'd be super, super cool. We always like to have just as many likes as we got viewers in the stream. And if you happen to be in that 55% or so people hanging out, watching and listening to CryptoCeej, if you've been enjoying those hangouts, please consider subscribing to the channel. We're in a mad dash to get to 9,000 subs this month. And I know we can get there, especially with your help. So hopefully you guys are kind of getting what I'm putting down here, picking up what I'm putting down. And it's a question, I believe, for you to ponder. Do you really want to have a trusted party to have to trust in? Or do you not want that? Where your assets, once deposited, are not your assets? Or do you want to not have a trusted intermediary and your assets are your assets? It's really your choice. It's really your choice. All right, so Rafa Kahneman had a very, very interesting take on this whole Ripple custody thing. I'd love to share. He's a smart guy. Let me see if I can't find that and share that with you guys. There it is. This is an interesting take here from Rafa Kahneman. Why is Ripple's acquisition of Hidden Road important, especially for XRP? This is what Rafa Kahneman has to say. Why does Ripple want this? Any XRP and XRPL advocates have been waiting for. Ripple is no longer just building around traditional financial infrastructure. They bought it. Among other things, Hidden Road connects the XRPL to actual plumbing of global markets. That means Ripple now has a direct path to put real institutional volume on the ledger. I think Brad said a few trillion on the ledger. All right, so that means potentially for the first time at scale, it says here. Ripple now has a direct path to put real institutional volume on the ledger, potentially for the first time at scale. This could be the beginning of the XRPL becoming a true settlement layer in global finance. Rafa Kahneman goes on to say, no, it probably won't affect XRP price in the short term. What does a prime broker like Hidden Road do? Well, in traditional finance, hedge funds and trading firms don't want to deal with every individual exchange, settle every trade themselves, or hold collateral all over the place. They use a prime broker as a central counterparty that gives them access to markets, handles clearing and settlement, offers leverage, and lets them borrow and lend across venues with unified credit and risk management, right? Just what Hugo explained. And what, again, I want to emphasize and reiterate what Hugo is saying is, why don't we have a protocol that does that? But there's no need for having to trust it. And he also says in that space that that's what we're building out. Do you see the difference? There's different approaches. Ripple is trying to make a big thing bigger. Ripple is trying to make a big thing bigger, leveraging the XRPL. And Flare is building a XRPL, if you will. They're building a protocol that'll sit on a public blockchain where you don't have to have a trusted entity. It says right here, they use a prime broker as a central counterparty. Counterparty risk. So why does Ripple want this? Ripple wants this because it gives them the architecture they need to deliver finance using blockchain rails underneath. Hidden Road already supports 300 plus institutions and clears 3 trillion in annual volume. It plugs into exchanges like Coinbase International, OKX, Deribit. By the way, Coinbase is looking into buying Deribit. That's what Thanos was saying. Bitfinex and Bullish. Its credit and clearing platform lets clients trade across these exchanges with one credit line and a single settlement partner. For Ripple, this opens the door to get its RLUSD stablecoin and XRP into actual institutional flows across multiple trading venues. This is where the XRPL thing comes in, and the AMM and the DEX, right? That has the auto bridging, the default asset as XRP. The $64 trillion question is always going to be the thing that comes onto the XRPL, these trillions of dollars, is that creating demand for the asset? And is that demand enough in which it benefits you and I as XRP holders? That's the $64 trillion question. And it remains to be seen, because year to date, that has not happened. It hasn't happened. So, for Ripple, this opens the door to get RUSD stablecoin and XRP into actual institutional flows across multiple trading venues. It also means Ripple can now directly service firms it already works with, like B2C2, which is a client of both RippleNet and Hidden Road. They did participate in Hidden Road's Series B, and they have history. And here is the important part. More importantly, Brad is quoted as saying they will use the XRPL for part of Hidden Road's post-trade settlement. It's a realization of the promise of the ledger to remove waiting hours, or days to settle across traditional banking systems. Some trades could clear instantly on the XRPL. He's highlighted this if here, okay? If Ripple can prove that the XRPL works as a high volume, low cost settlement system for real trades and real institutions, it sets a new benchmark for blockchain utility. This has the potential to dramatically increase the transactional volume on the XRP on the ledger and make XRP part of institutional trading and clearing flows. That's a nice, bold statement there. Should be highlighted. This has the potential to dramatically increase the volume, right, on the ledger and make XRP part of institutional trading and clearing flows. Note that the use of credit is key. Institutional finance runs on leveraging and netting, not fully funded accounts. Hidden Road gives Ripple the ability to provide capital efficient trading backed by its own balance sheet, especially RUSD. It can now be used as collateral across Hidden Road's platform, immediately increasing its utility and circulation. Instead of just being used for payments, RUSD can now function as a funding asset, a margin asset, and potentially a settlement layer across crypto and traditional markets. It would have been awesome to be able to say XRP can now function as a funding asset, a margin asset, and potentially a settlement layer across crypto and traditional markets. But that's not what it says. So again, for me, the $64 trillion question is there going to be demand for the asset? And will that demand for an asset, be XRP, be significant enough to benefit XRP holders? Because that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in Hidden Road. I'm just saying that's me and CryptoCeej's home. I'm not interested in Hidden Road and making Hidden Road bigger and better. I don't think Hidden Road is interested in XRP. Ripple is, but Hidden Road ain't. Put simply, this deal gives Ripple a potential place in the traditional finance world. They have a robust stack or plumbing, a regulated trading network, a stablecoin with real utility, a ledger with institutional grade settlement speed, a way to scale volume on the XRPL, and a new kind of customer, FIs and funds that need clearing and credit. If Ripple can connect all of that together, the XRPL becomes its end goal of infrastructure. Maybe they will run a validator. Talking about Hidden Road. Right. The $64 trillion question remains, will that volume create enough demand for the native asset of the XRPL? What the world? Why did it do that? That's the question. Still the same question. Hasn't changed. Appreciate you guys being here. The stream is not updating here. Let me make sure that's correct. Yeah, yeah. So that's the question. That's an interesting writer from Wrath Economist. He's a smart guy. And he's not offended by questions, and he doesn't turn and run to cancel culture when you ask a question or say that you're being negative because you asked a question. He's there for the back and forth, and he's willing to kind of share his views and willing to say, I may be wrong about this. So appreciate Wrath Economist for sure. So that's the big deal there. I think it's just really, really, really big for Hidden Road. I think Ripple has a goal of the ledger, right, being the architecture and the infrastructure for traditional finance in a global scale. And I think that is obviously important. I don't know what he means, Wrath Economist, when he says this is not going to do anything for the price of XRP short term. I think it should say, I just don't know if this is going to do anything at all for the price of XRP. We don't know. Like we don't ultimately we don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see how this folds out, and again what it means for the XRP holder. Because that's what I'm interested. I'm interested in the digital asset holder success, not Hidden Road's success. Because I believe in a world where institutions can participate on the thing that we have built out that benefits not just the institutions, but benefits the holders, and in which the institution doesn't control and ultimately own our assets. That's the deal. That's what I'm interested in that goal. And it's going to take longer to get there. But we can get there. That's the bottom line. You got to understand that we can get there. And major institutions are buying into Flair's vision of we can get there. And I love that. Rick Cisneros, what's going on, bro? Rick says, CJ, we will have to see how it will play out in the future. It is super early. Indeed. We're going to have to see how it plays out. Again, The $64 trillion question, in my view, is this volume that's going to come to the ledger, is it going to create demand for the native asset? If you can create demand for the native asset of the XRPL, which is XRP, I love it. It's awesome. Because that benefits not just the institutions, it benefits the XRP holder. And that's the difference. That's what I'm interested in seeing, right? And what Ripple is trying to do, in my view, is they're trying to figure out how do we create demand for the asset. It's not like they're not thinking about that. They are. They're thinking, how can we create demand for this asset? Because they have a bunch of that asset. They want demand for XRP. No question in my mind. No question in my mind. So again, to me, two different approaches to DeFi, Ripple and Flare. I lean more towards what Flare is doing because I think, I don't know, I've never been in any conversations, any rooms, but I believe that Flare's approach is with retail, the individual retail holders' best interest in mind first. And let the institutions play. Let the institutions play. So that's kind of how I see it. All right, fam, there it is. Thank you so much for hanging out. I said I'd be back to getting more of these videos, live streams twice a day now. So looking forward to hanging out with you guys later today as well. Interesting acquisition from Ripple. Awesome spaces. I don't know if you caught that spaces, Rick, but awesome space with Vet and Hugo and Thanos about XRP staking. Let me see if I can. Here it is here. Let me do this. Do a couple of things here. And also, I'll share this with you guys. So you'll have it if you want to check out the recording. It was an hour and it went by really, really fast. There's the link right there for the spaces. Bet held it. A couple other people helped them co-host it. To me, the gist of that is, for me, I don't want to use the word skepticism, but there was measured skepticism on XRP staking because there is no XRP staking on the ledger, right? So for me, that was kind of the foundation for the space. And I think I know Hugo has, cleared that up for people to understand because they have the TEEs and because they trust the execute environment and they have these what do they call it? Protocol managed wallets, which has an XRP address. So you understand that with an XRP address, right, you don't get an XRPL address on Bitcoin. The address has to be on the ledger, right? So this wallet is operating on the ledger, right? So it's important to understand that. But I kind of feel like the fundamental or foundational point behind this space was not just clarifying where yield comes from, but there's no staking on XRPL. So how are you going to get that done? Type deal. And I think Hugo cleared that up. And I think it's important to understand, what do we really want here? Do we want to be able to do more things with our XRP or no? Do we want to be able to get yield for our XRP or no? Right? Do you want it or no? That's really it. Or you just want to wait every 4 years and hope for a wind moon. So it's really up to you. Most XRP holders just want to wait every 4 years and just, let the market raise up the price that they hold and, then just go spend it. So, Rick says, I wonder if the AMM pools will have more volume and benefit from the acquisition. Yeah. And so an AMM pool, right, Rick? Someone has to be providing the assets for a pool. Like someone has to do it. So someone has to say, here's a liquidity pool of XRP and RLUSD, and it has this amount in this smart contract pool. There it is. Someone has to do it. It doesn't just come from an institution hopping onto the ledger. So we'll see. We'll see. But that's an excellent point now that I think about it. Because Hidden Road could do that. They work with market makers and all that stuff. They could set it up and have that set up without questions. That would be awesome if they do that. That would be so. Maybe that's an answer to the creating demand for XRP, setting up some liquidity pools. Because right now Ripple ain't doing it. Rick Cisneros. Right now, the entity that releases a billion. Is it a billion XRP or a billion in XRP? I don't even remember anymore. Right? They're not doing it. Right? That's why I say all the time, and I tag David Schwartz and Ripple X Dev, when liquidity incentive event. Right? See or no? Is Ripple providing liquidity pools on the XRPL? They just spent $1 billion on an acquisition. They don't have a 50 to 100 million to put in liquidity pools. They just got back 75 million of the 125 million. They just got it back. See or no? Am I wrong or no? Ripple just got back $75 million that they put up out of that 125 million. There's no money for a liquidity pool on the XRPL. Maybe now there is. I don't know. Brad said that vast balance sheet that they got. Said they got a vast balance sheet. Where's the LPs? Where's the liquidity pool for retail? Where is it? It's not really just for retail, but at least it is for retail. Institutions can hop on a liquidity pool, but where's the LPs? Where is it? Right now, you got XP Markets and Magnetic X providing the LP pools. You understand? That's what we got right now. Magnetic X and XP Market providing liquidity pools on the XRPL, not Ripple. I'm pretty sure, the lawsuit and all that kind of stuff is done deal. Pretty sure. I guess we're just waiting on, I don't know if it's the Honorable Annalisa Torres or, the SEC getting that part of it done, but they agreed to, take 50 mil, get this injunction out of the way. So, so there that is. All right, fam. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you guys being here. It's really, really cool hang. Guys, make sure you check out that Twitter Spaces. If you have some concerns or questions about XRP staking, I encourage you to level up your knowledge and your skill set. Remember, the risk is in you. 95% of the risk is in you. The other 5% is in the other stuff, right? So level up your skill set and your knowledge on what it is, and we'll go from there. So I think Ripple is trying to figure out a way to create demand for the native asset XRP. They're trying to figure it out. I personally believe the answer is 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 projects on the XRPL. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. One doing lending, one doing DeFi, one doing money markets, one doing perpetuals or futures, blah, blah, blah. One doing an aggregated DEX, one doing a da-da-da-da. That's what I believe creates demand for the asset XRP. That's my solution. Right? That's my solution. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what they do. Because the whole institutional regulated approach requires trusted entities. Hugo on the space said the thing that's going on now is you have to be KYC and you have to be AML. But there's a world that exists where it's a protocol that does the deal. Remember recent court cases. What's the dude that got imprisoned because he built the tornado thing? Remember the ruling's out. This is a smart contract. It's a protocol smart contract. Right? That was the ruling. Drop that case or whatever they did. The dude's not still out yet, but that's massive. DeFi, Uniswap, drop that as well. It's a smart contract on this protocol. Right? Those are big rulings, which means that something can be built out that is not needed, where there is not a centralized entity and or intermediary needed to house your assets and or custodial your assets. All right, fam. Thanks so much for hanging out. I appreciate each and every one of you being here. Do me a favor, if you can hit the like button on the way in, would you please do so on the way out? That would be super cool. And if you happen to be in the 55% or so people hanging out, listening to and watching the CryptoCeej, if you've been enjoying those hangouts, please consider subscribing to the channel. And don't forget to ring that notification bell, baby, so you know whenever we go live or whenever we upload a video. I'm going to end this one like I do all my videos and remind you guys of this. Old money doesn't want you to win. But that's okay, though, because you and I, we're already winning. And I would ask you to consider this or perhaps ponder the idea or notion of living your life permissionless. I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya.